All right, everybody, welcome to Virtual Bourbon. We have a flagship whiskey event where we're going to be talking with individuals representing 4 great distilleries. So we're going to have some fun tonight, enjoying their flagship whiskey and hearing about the stories behind them and what they envision the future of their flagship whiskey to be as well. The 4 distilleries are going to be as follows. We're going to have Erik Wolfe of Stoll and Wolfe. Next up will be Colin Spoelman of Kings County. Then we'll have Joyce Nethery of Jeptha Creed, and finally, Dr. Pat Heist of Wilderness Trail. You did receive your samples, and you've got the placemat, and we're going to follow along that order that I just went over that follows the proofs. Paul, do you have a question? You're raising your hand.
No, I was just trying to get Chris Lupo's attention. That's all. But you can't do it. All right, thank you.
Okay, no problem. So you'll meet all 4 of those individuals. We keep to 90 minutes on these, so we don't want to keep our distillers too long. They're busy and they've got lives too. So yeah, I always say it'd be fun, and you get a group like this, we could probably, a bunch of bourbon geeks like us, we could probably talk to these people for 6-7 hours, but we're not going to do that to them. Even though they're nice enough, they'd probably stick around. We're not going to do that to them. We're going to stick to 90 minutes. So we are going to get started here. First up is Erik Wolfe. Erik, how you doing?
Doing great. Thank you. Thank you for the chance to be here this evening.
Absolutely. So Erik Wolfe is with Stoll and Wolfe in Pennsylvania. And obviously, again, our condolences for the loss of Mr. Dick Stoll. I mean, that was certainly impactful to us and our audience. I mean, we talked a lot about him and that meeting that when Royce and I came up there, and I know it's not an easy time, but now you do it in memory of him, and I'm sure you learned a lot over the last several years. So you've got a lot you can take from that.
That's that's a great way to put it. It definitely we joke that unfortunately passing away was the first human thing that I actually saw Dick ever do. So yeah, and for me, I mean, I'm sure the other distillers will attest to the same, that the process of making whiskey, it's so dangerous and it's so labor intensive that it keeps you present. And for me, getting back to making whiskey is just, I hear Dick's voice in the back of my head, get the hell back to work. And I get a lot of comfort actually from actually physically producing.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about Stoll and Wolfe and kind of what your visions with the companies were and how you got started. How did you partner with Dick Stoll, that type of thing?
Sure. So the most analog person in the world, Dick Stoll, again, I was joking with the writer Sam Komlenik that it was so old school that he didn't even know the term. He just was that.
Mm-hmm.
We actually got connected through the internet. He didn't have an email address, but his wife did. Victoria and Ethan Smith had actually recently hosted a meetup. We had just missed that, but we're fortunate enough to get connected through that. And ever since then, it's been kind of a whirlwind. So for us, we're very small. It's my father and I that do the production. My wife runs the front. We do have help, but we run actually a small 12-inch column, the diameter being indicative of capacity in the distilling world, and then also with a pot still in line as a thumper. So we're right now, only producing about 2 barrels a week, which is nothing for the distilling world, but in the craft world, it's something, and have a lot of capacity to expand. Mm-hmm. So for us, we're producing using Dick Stoll's recipe, his process. He actually started. We had asked him how he really went on his path to become a master distiller, and laughed and said he never did. Basically, he came out of the Korean War. Again, a local guy, had never left Lebanon County, local area, went into the Navy for the Korean War, did a tour of duty over in the Mediterranean, came back after working on basically the forerunner of jets. So, pretty advanced technology for the time. went to the local unemployment office, told them they were looking for someone to dig ditches. So that's what he did. And from there, that was the expansion of the local historic distillery. He learned distilling from the ground up, basically. So for us, our entire process is based on his input and what he learned from Charlie Beam, who was his mentor and a member of the Beam family. So basically producing Pennsylvania rye whiskey and Pennsylvania bourbon. With Pennsylvania rye, meaning that, at least in our interpretation, that it's got quite a bit of rye in it, but it's also got a decent amount of corn as well. Quite a bit of corn grown in our area. And then also with our bourbon, also quite a bit of rye as well. So again, trying to honor Dick's legacy and keep that style of production alive.
Mm-hmm. So, and obviously we're going to be tasting this in just a moment. You'll run us through a tasting of it, but tell us a little bit about the Pennsylvania rye that we're going to be drinking tonight and enjoying.
Sure. Pennsylvania rye, it's a sweet mash rye. So for those of you that are familiar with bourbon, I'm sure you're quite familiar with the sour mash process, where backset is included to acidify and increase flavor, also increase the amount of alcohol yield. For us, the sweet mashing of the rye was a historic point, and also something that Dick just was. It's what he had always done, and he was very adamant that it was very important to the flavor as well. So for us, sweet mash rye, again, 60% rye, 30% corn, 10% malt. So in Dick's mind, it was very evocative of a Sam Thompson style rye, also very similar to what he had produced at his time at the historic Michter's distillery. We increased the amount of rye, which he had always wanted to do there, but due to cost constraints, he wasn't allowed to. So with Dick's thinking, the corn and the rye, there's a nice interplay there. And the idea being that if you add a little bit of coffee to a chocolate cake recipe, you get a little bit more of the nuance of the coffee, a little bit more, or excuse me, of the chocolate, a little bit more of a rounder, fuller flavor. So with the spice of the rye and a little bit more of the sweetness of the corn, nice sort of, again, regional style rye, as opposed to the Western style where the probably 80 to 90% rye in there as well.
Okay. Well, if you haven't done so already, if you want to take out that sample number 1 all the way to the left, if you've got them laid out correctly on your placemat, and Stoll and Wolfe Pennsylvania rye. All right. And as always, we like participation from the group. If you could use the chat function as we run through our tasting here, if you want to share any nosing notes, tasting notes, that type of thing, we certainly appreciate that from the audience. All right, Erik, what do we anticipate here as we do this?
So, it's interesting. We have the opportunity to taste with quite a bit of people throughout the years, and again, so many different things end up coming out. But what I end up getting again and again is I don't know if you're familiar with Cherry Cavendish pipe tobacco, but just sort of that vanilla sort of cherry, also a little bit of that pipe tobacco together. Also gingerbread for me as well, particularly the allspice and clove.
Okay.
On the nose.
What's anybody else getting on the nose? I see cherry and red apples on the nose. That's good. I catch apples too. Pretty good amount of apples there. Different rye than I'm used to. There's a citrus zest there, so that's good. Grape, even.
So in answer to the question about Monongahela rye, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, I think I've heard it pronounced about 20 different ways.
I was already stressing out over that because I didn't want to pronounce that one.
No, I feel like we should ask Dave Wondrich maybe what the correct way is for that. But it's Monongahela rye is traditionally a higher rye content. So this is truly a distinctive regional style. It's an Eastern PA style rye. Lancaster County is the most productive non-irrigated farmland in all of North America, actually. In California, in the Central Valley, in Florida, they actually produce more, but it's all irrigated. So for us, we have quite an abundance of both rye and corn. Excuse me, this area was the frontier in the early 1700s. So basically distilling was a necessity at that time. So with that, they used what grew locally, and we had a lot of corn and quite a bit of rye.
All right, let's get a taste here and see what we got. I'm definitely getting even the apple cider on the nose. Let's give a taste. Yeah, I agree with the bear. Very sweet up front. Taste is similar to the nose. Candy corn.
And now we go into the barrel at 109, and we are using a number 4 char. All per, we used to joke, we have R&D, which was research and whatever Dick says. So those were his stipulations. So
yeah, it's sweet up front, and then drinks very smooth. And then the spice kind of hits you late and kind of in the middle of the tongue, I would say, for me. I don't know about everybody else, but and then it warms up nicely then. So it's really good, Erik. Really good stuff, man.
Thank you very much. It seems like rye, the spice is either what makes it or breaks it for a lot of people. Again, in tastings, you have people right next to each other who both notice the spice. And again, in the same sentence, will both be like, oh, that's what, again, makes it or breaks it for them. So some folks, it seems like, really, really gravitate towards this spice. For other folks that are maybe less rye curious, they, I think I'm borrowing from Fred Minnick there with that term, but who are less inclined to try rye, it does have a little bit of corn sweetness for it.
Yeah, definitely. So, Erik, one of the questions that we always like to ask about these whiskeys, because we are talking to craft distilleries, and what is your flagship whiskey now? This could evolve over time, or, you could be like, this is exactly the expression that we're looking for. But so tell me what the future is. Is it, are we there, or is it something that you envision being different down the road, maybe age longer? What do you see the future of this one?
I think longer age is definitely something that we're always looking to play with. I think with craft distilleries, there is quite a bit of experimentation, which we do as well. I think with our flagship product, it's the type of thing where, because of Dick Stoll's influence, we had a little bit more of a finished idea maybe of what we were looking for in a flagship product. And with rye, it's very interesting. Some folks claim that 3 to 4 years is kind of a sweet spot where you have still the vibrancy of the grain without too much of the barrel character taking over. So for us, we're definitely looking for older expressions, and we're excited to explore those. But I think for a flagship product for rye, a 4 year is a pretty solid age for us and for this expression. We are playing with quite a bit of other releases, including some heritage grain as well.
Excellent. Some other comments. I mean, you're getting a lot in, which tells you that it's always a good sign, the complexity of the whiskey, when you get so many different tasting notes. So you got to be enjoying seeing all this, Erik. I guess it's happy. Yeah.
I appreciate that. And also, if folks get a chance, let it sit for a bunch of the tasting and come back to it. It's really interesting to see how much the nose and flavor do evolve as it has a chance to breathe as well.
Okay. It's a good tip, right? So, all right, Erik, and hopefully you've got time to stick around, because we will open this up at the end for questions and things like that, an interactive portion of this. So
great.
Sounds good. Okay. And of course you can follow along and enjoy the other whiskeys as we go through these. All right. Next up is Colin Spoelman of Kings County. Colin, how you doing, man?
Oh, good.
Good. So you're not home right now, though. You're out on the West Coast, right?
I am in the West Coast right now, where I spend a little bit of my time with my family. So looking forward to getting back to New York.
Yes. Yes. So tell us a little bit about your distillery, because there's many unique challenges, running a distillery like you do, in Brooklyn. And, so tell us a little bit about running a New York distillery.
Well, it's been tricky this year, I could tell you.
Yeah.
No, I grew up in Kentucky. So that, people, as soon as I moved to New York, everybody started asking me about, what sort of bourbon should they be drinking? And I would say, I don't really know them. I'm from the Eastern Kentucky. We don't really, it's a whole different part. Our thing is moonshine. And then people would be like, oh, you can get moonshine. So I really came to become a distiller through sort of coming up in Kentucky and then sort of sharing that culture with New York. And I guess I would say the entire distilling program that we have kind of came about through that sort of exchange of New York has a very big culinary, it has an amazing bar scene, cocktail culture, a lot of that going on, but it didn't have any distilling culture whatsoever. So to be able to bring a little bit of that from Kentucky, and then New York City is also this great melting pot of all cultures from around the world. So we sort of borrow a little bit from Kentucky, we borrow from Scotland, we borrow from Irish whiskey, Appalachian moonshine, just kind of take a lot of different ideas and put them into the mix. And one way or another, our whiskeys come out of that sort of cultural, mix. And so we're focused on American whiskeys, but we do a lot of whiskeys that travel between bourbon and Scotch whiskey. And I think, in the scheme of craft distillers, we certainly play around a lot. I mean, that's one thing that we like to do and like to share with people and really bring them into the process of creation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The experiments and all that kind of stuff. You do a lot of that type of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah, because, a lot of people, are not necessarily going to get the opportunity to travel to Kentucky. They're at this point, they're not going to get the opportunity to travel to Brooklyn, but, just to be able to, in normal times, share the process of distillation. When we got started, people really didn't know what they were drinking when they drank whiskey. And now people are a lot more educated. And it's a serious credit to craft distillers around the country who have educated people and sort of the level of knowledge around whiskey has gone up so much. And that is a testament both to craft distillers and then also, the culture of whiskey has grown through things like this. So,
mm-hmm. So you've got an interesting selection here.
It's been great. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, so what we're about to try is Kings County's peated bourbon.
Yes. So you've got this combination. You got people who enjoy Scotch are very excited right now and want to try this. You got some of the people who are just bourbon a little nervous right now. So this will be fun. So yeah, tell us about this one.
So because as a Kentuckian, I like bourbon. So I wanted to make bourbon, and so that's what we started with. But I also had a lot of Scotch drinkers come to the distillery and say, I drink Johnny Walker. Can you make some that tastes like Johnny Walker? So I was a little bit like, okay, sure, we could probably do that. And then simultaneously, a lot of the whiskey press was writing about Balcones Brimstone and Corsair's Triple Smoke and some of these American single malts that were starting to pop up that were smoky and had a very, maybe I would say, an over-the-top characteristic to it. So we started making a single malt, and so we had a lot of this peated malt in the distillery, and we ran out of the malted barley that we were using for the straight bourbon, and lo and behold, there we were sitting on a big pallet of peated malt. And so we threw that into the bourbon and, kind of a year later cracked it open, and we realized that was kind of, it was brilliant. I mean, it was just, it's a whiskey that it travels between bourbon and Scotch. It's mostly a bourbon. It's not a heavily peated whiskey. So if you're thinking of Lafroig and Ardbeg, and you know, it's not going to go quite that extreme in the peat, but it's just a little hint of a Scotch on the finish of what would otherwise be a bourbon.
Okay. And just to clarify, I don't know what everybody's experience level here, Colin. So just to give us a difference in, obviously you just shared how you do this. It's a grain that is peated. Tell us a little bit about the peat that we would taste if we were drinking a Scotch, the difference in that process versus what you're doing.
Right. So, so most whiskeys made anywhere in the world have some amount of barley in them. And the barley's been malted, which is this process by which you sort of germinate those seeds. And then in the process of malting the grain, there are enzymes that break down the starch in whatever is your base grain. In American whiskey, that's often corn or rye, and convert that starch to sugar. So most whiskeys have some type of malted barley, but the European tradition is that the whiskey is made either entirely from malted barley or much more so from malted barley. And in certain parts of Scotland where they didn't have trees to make wood fires to heat the floor of the distillery, part of the malting process is to get the seeds wet, start the germination, and then a week later you stop the germination by heating the grain in a kiln or in some way. And so peat was used to kind of as part of that malting process. Gotcha. And that has stuck with a lot of the distilleries in the island of Islay, but throughout other parts of Scotland, there are peated grains. And peat is this kind of fossilized turf that is sort of a precursor to coal. And it's very prominent in Northern Europe and Canada. So it's a way to add a little bit of a smoky characteristic, a little bit of that sort of Scotchy characteristic to what is otherwise very much an American whiskey.
Okay. All right. So let's, if you haven't poured it already, pour yourself the number 2 on your placemat. And Colin, what should we expect here as we take our first nose of this one?
So this is this is a younger whiskey than people are probably used to drinking. It's by now it's like closer to a 2-year, but it has a 1-year age statement. It's also aged in smaller barrels. So we're talking about 15-gallon barrels for, I guess, most of this. But we have found that the peat shows better when the whiskey is younger. So we don't necessarily, this is not like a whiskey that's going to improve with age. It's just going to get more like bourbon. And in fact, we have some 4-year barrels of peated bourbon. We just fold those into our regular bourbon, product because it's indistinguishable from the regular bourbon. Mm-hmm. Whereas the peat shows a lot on the sort of younger side. So this was a way to give, as a new distillery, some complexity, some interest to what would otherwise be a young bourbon. And now most of our bourbons are in the 2-year range, 4-year range. We have a 7-year that's coming out very soon. But this is like kind of young and fun, and is supposed to kind of travel that world between bourbon, which has kind of caramel and popcorn and kind of familiar notes that way, towards the Scotch, which is more grassy, honey, hay, tobacco, some of those notes.
Okay. One note, orange on the nose. And a question came in, where's the peat from that is used in the grain?
So in this case, the peat comes from the eastern part of Scotland near Aberdeen. Okay. So when most people are used to peat, they're talking about Islay Scotch, which is this, sort of rocky island that's very briny, characteristic to a lot of those Scotch whiskeys. But this is coming more from the eastern side, and it's been described as having more of a barbecue flavor. Yeah. And so this has a little bit of that heft that you associate with like barbecue sauce, which
I can see that,
makes it great for pairing with, barbecue, anything that's got a little smoke to it. It does make it a great whiskey as a complement to that.
Yep. Yeah. I'm getting all that. I'm getting the barbecue sauce, orange, and somebody said Cracker Jack. I could see that too. All right, let's do a taste here and see what we got here. So cheers, gang. Yeah, I mean, that's That's really good. I mean, like you said, it's just the, kind of the essence of peat. I mean, it's not, again, I'm definitely not a Scotch guy at all. So I avoid that stuff, but
Right.
this is really good, man. So
Neither am I really, but I also, again, I sort of, let's say I appreciate a lot of the craftsmanship that is in Scotch whiskey, and I appreciate a lot of the distillation technique. So this is a double pot distilled whiskey, and that is a little bit unusual in American whiskey. Most American whiskey is column distilled. And so we use pot stills that were built in Scotland, which somebody mentioned the long finish. A pot still will tend to give you a little bit more of a viscosity, a little bit more of an oilier characteristic, depending on how you use the pot still. I mean, you can make a lighter bodied pot still whiskey, but most people use a pot still because they want to have a heavier, more flavor forward kind of that long finish is very characteristic of pot still whiskey. And so Scotch whiskey, single malt Scotch at least, is always distilled on pot stills. And so that's a great, another place where we borrow more from the Scotch tradition than the American tradition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this would go great with a plate of ribs for sure. Mm-hmm. I think that would be pretty good. Tobacco in the finish, I like that. Someone who doesn't like Scotch, this is more accessible. Yes, I 100% agree. Someone's asking, is it double distilled?
Yeah, so we use a very, basically we have a 1,000-liter pot still and then a 650-liter pot still. And so basically one goes into the other, but they're shaped the same and they have that beautiful sort of, pot still kind of onion shape that people associate with that very old style of still. It's actually pretty outdated technology as far as distillation goes. But, some people swear by it. And, certainly I, as a distiller, when I was getting started, I would play around with a hobby still. And you can get hobby stills and configure them to run as a column or a pot. And I just always preferred the pot. And so as we've expanded the distillery several times over the years, we've kept to that pot still style.
Oh, that's good. Didn't you start out with a bunch of just little stills when you very first started in the business?
Used 8-gallon stills, 26-gallon stills. Then we got the 270 and 190 liters gallon stills, and then we just got a new Vendome stripping still. So that's now cool. All the whiskey that we're distilling is coming off this very unusual looking. It's still a pot still. It's still a Scotch style still, but it's got a submarine characteristic, which Vendome suggested, and it's a little moonshiny, which I like about it. And so, but this whiskey that you're consuming, that was all distilled on the Foresight, the Scotch still setup. So as time goes on, we've kind of played with a lot of different stills, and I think, we didn't have a beam in our showing us how to do it, and so we had to just wing it the whole time and
experiment. So yeah.
Definitely reflect a certain level of incompetence, but also a certain level of curiosity, and so kind of learning by doing, and kind of not necessarily accepting the conventional wisdom. One of which is that American whiskey is column distilled. Another is that small barrels are bad, or that the water has to be of a particular, from a horse farm,
Right. Yeah.
So, we've some of those, but then also accepting other myths as being very true, like every barrel is different. And that's one of those things that, how can they all be that different? But as it turns out, they actually, that requires a lot of maintenance to kind of keep consistency as you work through a lot of different barrels that come off the same day of distillation.
Yeah.
So, so we've definitely, we came to the business or to distilling as a cultural inheritance, but not necessarily from a sort of family tradition or anything like that.
Yeah. And of course, we like to ask everybody, what's the future of your Flagship Whiskey here?
Sorry, ask that again.
Oh yeah. So we just always like to ask, because we're talking to craft distilleries, knowing that getting your products out is a process, and what's the future of this product? Is it where you exactly where you want to be, or do you see some changes and tweaks down the road, perhaps?
Right. So this one is pretty much where we want it to be. So we have a bourbon that is more popular. So we make a more classic sort of bourbon. It's a pot distilled bourbon. It's a high malt bourbon, but it's still, it's more squarely a traditional bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
And that's more popular. That's what we sell the most of. But this is our number 2 bestseller. It's about 25% of what we sell. And if anything, we've been filling full-size barrels, and those might push the age statement a little bit higher, maybe over 2 years. But again, this is not a whiskey that's going to benefit from a super long aging process. We make whiskeys that we want to have a longer aging profile on them.
Mm-hmm.
But flagship is a word that connotes sort of volume, and having a 7-year as a flagship is that requires a lot of time. And so I think if you're a distiller, you want to have something that's relatively straightforward, that people can appreciate, and that you can produce year in, year out. So I think one thing that we have played with over the years is to dial up the peat level.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, it has a little bit more peat in the mash bill, peat and malt in the mash bill, than our flagship bourbon. It's a 75 corn to 25% peated malt, as opposed to the flagship bourbon, which is 80% corn, 20% peated malt, or regular malt. So not a wild difference in the way that it's produced, but for practical reasons, just shifting to larger barrels, we're producing about 2.5 barrels a day now. So using full-size barrels is just more practical for us at the scale that we are. But as you were saying, we've existed in a lot of different scales. And then the barrels that we're pulling out of the warehouse have been from every era over the 10 years of the distillery's history. Yeah. So it will change a little bit based on all of those considerations, but not drastically.
Not drastically. Okay, very cool. All right, and hopefully you got time to stick around with us, Colin. And
sure, yeah,
sure. Good deal. All right, next up is owner of Jeptha Creed and distiller Joyce Nethery. Joyce, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here. Thanks.
Absolutely. So, and I've worked with Joyce before. She was in my movie Kindred Spirits, if anybody's seen that. And if you haven't, you should. It's out there on Amazon, so check it out, Kindred Spirits. And it's a good movie, and Joyce is in there with her daughter Autumn. So, yeah, it's cool. Awesome. So, tell us a little bit. I mean, you have one of the most unique distilleries in the country, and that it is a true, farm to glass distillery. So, tell us a little bit about the farm and how you got started in the whiskey business.
Sure. Well, we are a family-owned distillery. Autumn and I run the distillery. So we are the 2 owners. But we also, this year, my son has come into ownership because you can't own any of a distillery until you're at least 21. He's turned 21 this year, so he's now also a partial owner. But we are still majority woman-owned. So still got that part going on.
Yep, absolutely.
We grow all of our own corn that we use, and it's a varietal called Bloody Butcher, which is non-GMO and open pollinated, and it's been documented in use since at least 1845. So there's this beautiful red corn that just tastes fantastic, and we love using it. We're growing this year about 500 acres. So my husband manages growing all that, and so he's stressing at the moment.
We guess so.
Yeah. Harvested in.
Yeah.
But the way we came about with the distillery is, we're right here in the middle of Kentucky, right in the middle of bourbon country. We've always loved and enjoyed the bourbon. And my husband grew up as a dairy farmer, and we had a dairy of our own for a while. And we still have the farm. We still have the cows and pigs and chickens and buffalo and the tractors and corn planters. We still have all of those pieces. Uh-oh, I just knocked over my sight glass. And my background is in chemical engineering. And I worked for many years in industrial distillation. So distilling methyl methacrylate, which is now a founding monomer. Lately, you're going to see it in fingernail polishes and things like that. You know, the fake fingernails.
Gotcha.
So spent many years distilling on the industrial chemical scale, and had our children still over the farm. And we wanted to build something for the kids that they could use for their careers and for their incomes, and for, you know, build a kind of a legacy. And we wanted to incorporate skills from both my husband and myself, and ground to glass distillery is what we came up with. So my husband grows the corn, I distill it, and my daughter, with her marketing background, gets it out the door.
Excellent.
So that's where it came from.
And with your son coming in, what has it been established a role for him, or is he kind of working some different things right now, kind of being newer to it, or what's going on there?
He wants to figure out his path right now. He doesn't have a defined role. Whenever he decides to come in, we'll come up with one for him. But he's been involved with us from the beginning. So he has built the racks, contributed to building the racks that the bourbon is aging on. He is also our beekeeper. So we have a line of vodkas and moonshines, and all naturally flavored. So some of the honey in our honey vodka comes from my son's bees. Mm-hmm. And he's been a bartender for us, because we have a cocktail bar and a bar back. So he's also worked this summer in the distillery too, with the distillers. So he's touching it around.
It's probably for the best. Yeah, doing a little bit of everything. So
trying to figure out what he wants to do.
Yeah.
So he's in college right now, but when he wants to join us, we'll be very happy to have him come and join us.
Yeah, that's great. So tell us a little bit about the whiskey itself, Joyce. So obviously this is made with your bloody butcher corn, but tell us what you like about the whiskey and all those type of things.
Well, our objective with making the bourbon is this is made with that bloody butcher corn. Mm-hmm. So it is 70% of the beautiful bloody butcher corn. And then we use all malted grains. So we have malted wheat, malted rye, and malted barley in there. So as they were telling you before, Colin was telling you about how the malting process goes, we use that malted barley, but in addition, we have that process for the wheat and the rye also. So it's kind of, the effect I think it has, it just takes those flavors and kind of smooths them out, and makes it very nice and approachable, and kind of allows those flavors to develop, you know, in the bourbon, I think, pretty well, kind of in a beautiful way. It is 98 proof, and what we're going to be tasting today has come from all 53-gallon barrels. When we first released the bourbon, it had some 10-gallon barrels blended in with it, about 20%. But as we've gone along, we moved to all 53 gallons.
Okay.
It is a little bit over 2 years. I'm starting to approach about 2.5 years on it, and I'm just super proud of it.
Okay. Well, let's taste this. So again, number 3 on your placemat there, just following along, and go ahead and pour that in your glass if you haven't done so already. And Joyce, as we pick this up to start nosing it, can you tell us a little bit about what we should expect?
Yes, I think we get a lot of beautiful fruit type notes on the nose from our bloody butcher corn. So I think as you're nosing it, you're going to get a little bit of some dark berry, maybe dark cherry, some maybe a little bit of dried apricot on the nose. Mostly some red berries, a little bit of brown sugar, and a little bit of maybe a blackberry jam going on with it.
Mm-hmm. Got floral notes coming in here, almost rose-like, so very, very soft for sure.
Maybe a little bit of hydrangea, morning glory. A little kind of sweet on the nose too.
Yeah, yeah. Chris is saying he gets the almond.
Yay, almond, beautiful. I see that bloody candy corn.
Bloody candy corn.
That is cool.
Okay. Well, let's give this thing a taste, folks, and see what we think here. Let's get some good tasting notes going.
I think, like you just said with the almonds on the palate, we do get a good little bit of nuts.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a little bit of pecan going on with it. Some touch of clove, and obviously the vanilla.
Yeah.
A little smidgen of some nutmeg.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Little spice to it too, so that's nice.
Yeah, a little bit of the pepper.
Mm-hmm. Little pepper in there for sure. What are you guys getting as you? Mr. Bear, what do you got?
Cake spice, yeah.
Lots of cake spice, yep. A ton going on in here. Yeah. Brazil nuts. There's kind of something from the bakery in there. There's some baked good in there for sure. Angel food cake. Okay, there you go with orange. Yeah, distinct orange too, like a mandarin type of orange. That's good. Spice on the front. Yeah, I agree. Spice hits you near the front of the palate. Mm-hmm. Good stuff come through.
Yeah.
Very good, Joyce.
Thank you. I think it's beautiful. I'm super proud of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and of course, and we continue to ask, what do you envision for the future of this one, Joyce?
Well, what I envision for the future of this 4 grain is that as time goes on, we will be able to come out with older product. We didn't, as we were starting the distillery, we didn't contract, we didn't buy any MGP barrels or anything. Mm-hmm. Our bourbon is only as old as we are, and we're approaching our 4th birthday in November. So as we cross over into 2021, we'll be having some, older barrels, older product at 4, and as we continue to age, we'll get, older age statements as we go along. Mm-hmm. Bourbon is our flagship, and we've got the 4 grain out right now. But as we've been going along, we've also been distilling and aging a high rye bourbon.
Okay.
Using malted rye.
Yeah.
High wheat bourbon using the malted wheat. And we have a red, white, and blue bourbon that we're aging right now too. So the red, white, and blue is really cool. So we used an heirloom blue corn that my husband has developed, and the heirloom Bloody Butcher red, and an heirloom white. So red, white, and blue. And we opened on Veterans Day, which was November 11th of 2016.
Okay.
So we will be releasing that on Veterans Day for our 5th anniversary. No, actually our 6th anniversary in 2022. Mm-hmm.
So yes, and very patriotic as you walk through your distillery. So you don't ever forget that the Veterans Day, and you celebrate that. So it's cool stuff.
Yeah, one of our things that we wanted to do is be all about our local history, heritage, and culture. Mm-hmm. And being very patriotic is very, very important to us. So we do have American flags all over the fence in the front. We have a big American flag in the distillery and on the visitor side coming in. So a lot of patriotism going on there. So we want to honor all of our veterans and our EMT workers and everyone who's allowing us to live the lives that we are right now.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple questions came in for you. Are you open right now? So someone's going to be there next month and kind of inquiring about a tour, and you may or may not even know, but what's the kind of the plan at this point?
We are open right
Okay.
now. We are open Thursday through Sunday. It is different than it was before. The gift shop is open, and we have tastings, free tastings. You do have to reserve them. And then we have the cocktail bar, because Kentucky allows you to actually serve cocktails. So the cocktail bar is outside on the patio. It's a covered patio, so if you come and it's raining, you're still going to be protected. And we have a cafe, so you can get a pizza. You'll have a little bit of a lunch while you're here too.
Nice.
So you can do that. We do also have it's a barrel tasting experience that we offer by reservation, where we will take you out to where we're aging the bourbon and allow you to taste that rye I mentioned. That's not out on the store shelves yet, so it's still aging, but you can taste the rye. And
do you get to sit in those nice chairs that I saw when
yes.
I was looking at? Yes. Oh, that's a nice area. Imagine the most comfortable chairs you can find in a rick house.
Yeah.
I mean, this is perfection. We're all seeking this.
Absolutely. It's beautiful. It's super comfortable. You got leather chairs if it gets cool. We've got big fur throws to put on you so you can do your Game of Thrones. It's super comfortable and a lot of fun.
Very nice. Yeah. Last question for you before we move on. Jen was wanting to know about the name. How did you come up with the name Jeptha Creed?
Yeah. Well, our home farm, where we still live and where we raised our children, is at the foothills of some hills here called the Jeptha Knobs. And those knobs were named by Squire Boone and Daniel Boone when they came in and explored Kentucky in the late 1700s. They were attracted to those hills because there was a salt lick up there. So that's where all the deer and the buffalo and the turkey were. So I like to say it was kind of the grocery store of their day. And we found documentation that says they named him Jeptha after a biblical warrior in Judges 11. So like I said, we want to be all about our local history, heritage, and culture. And right there with that name, Jeptha, I've got my personal family history. I've got local and state history with the Boones, and I've got Bible history connected to it. So I think Jeptha is just perfect for a name for us. And then Creed is our promise to stand by honoring those values as we grow and develop and mature.
That's great. That's awesome. All right, Joyce, you got time to stick around with us?
Absolutely.
All right. Yes, we'll have a Q&A here at the end. So everyone, if you've thought of something you want to talk to Joyce about, you will get your chance along with any of our other distillery owners that are here tonight. All right. Our next one, last but not least, Dr. Pat Heist, maybe one of the most knowledgeable people in the world when it comes to yeast, and it puts on a great presentation. And even though he's the smartest guy in the world, he can put it where I can understand stuff, which is cool. And what else? He was on like the third bourbon show we ever did, which was very cool that he'd even respond to us when no one was listening to our show. So that's awesome. Always appreciate him for that. We did have a best beard in bourbon. I faced him in round 1 of the playoffs. I knocked him off. Maybe it was home field advantage. I don't know, but I knocked him off, so I feel pretty good about that. Pat, what do you think about that? You lose?
No, man. You should have done well on your own show. I'm gonna have to do my own show one time on the best beer.
And you can knock me off on your show. It'll yes. The funny thing about that is that show just stands out to me, not because of that which was cool, and I got knocked off, by the way, right after that. But the thing about that was Mike Veach is still mad at me to this day because he lost to Fred Minnick in the first round. He said Fred Minnick can't even grow a beard better than a high schooler, and he's very proud of what he's got going on. So yeah, he's still angry about that. So he says he doesn't listen to my show, but he's still mad about that. So apparently Rosemary listens, but yeah. So yes, that's the story there. So Pat, how are you doing?
Good.
So you've got some great things going on. Wilderness Trail. Tell us a little bit about your distillery and what you guys have going on there.
Yeah. So Wilderness Trail. We started. My business partner Shane Baker and I. We started back in 2006 with a company called Firm Solutions. And we market yeast and enzymes and technical support to over 600 different distilleries and breweries currently, as well as, non-alcoholic fermented beverages like kombucha and kefir and those kind of things. Anything that has to do with fermentation we're involved with, including like vinegar production, et cetera, et cetera. So we ran that business for a while, you know, doing a lot of technical support for distilleries. Yep. And learned a lot about, you know, the process. And then along came about 2012, and we started Wilderness Trail Distillery. You know, had a little bit of capital that we had raised through our Firm Solutions company. And also, you know, where we're in there doing technical support for hundreds of other distilleries, we kind of had, you know, thought we had what it took to start a distillery.
You kind of seen it all. Yeah. Before you even started, you kind of seen everything at that point.
Yeah. So we started a small distillery in 2012, making about 1 barrel of whiskey a day, 5 days a week. So we were doing about 250 to 300 barrels a year. And we did that for a couple years and then expanded to a column production system, an 18-inch column, and went to 40 barrels a day, up from 1 barrel a day.
Huge jump. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, 2 years after that, 2018, we started about 215 to 220 barrels a day. We incorporated another system, and currently we're doing about 1,500 barrels a week on a 7-day, 3-shift-a-day operation. And according to my math, we're the 14th largest bourbon producer in the world, and we just became the 18th member of the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, pretty much the same day COVID hit. So,
well, there's good and bad going on there.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Well, yeah. Okay. That's amazing growth there. So hopefully you continue to answer my phone calls. I mean, I always worry. Well, you're getting pretty big now. I don't know. It might be like, I don't need to talk to that guy. I appreciate I appreciate the support. So obviously we're going to be sharing a whiskey here today, and this looks like a pretty special one that we've got here. So this is your bourbon, but this is coming in at 109 proof, your family reserve. So tell us about this one, what we're going to be drinking.
So first I'll tell you that the same week that I sent your samples, I had another one that I did, and I had promised that I was going to give them a couple different barrel picks. And I thought, you know what, and you know how I am, because we've dealt with this over the last several months, you know, hey, dude, when are you going to send those samples? You know, I'm kind of a procrastinator. But anyhow, it came the week where I needed to be sending some samples off, and I was like, oh, I need to hit the store and get some barrel picks. I couldn't find one damn barrel pick anywhere around here. So I ended up pretty much giving up a lot of my barrel pick stash that I've been accumulating, which is fine with me. But this particular barrel pick, this is one that our distributor did in Kentucky and is available at several different stores. It's actually, so this is our wheated bourbon. The barrel pick is from our distributor. They call it the Lion's Share.
Okay.
But it's available here in Kentucky. So this is actually a single barrel strength offering. Normally, so this is our wheated bourbon. Those of you who are familiar with our whiskeys, on the side of our label here, we always put the mash bill. So this has got on your tasting sheet here, it says 64% corn, 24% wheat, 12% malted barley. But normally this is bottled as bottle in bond single barrel, and this one is a single barrel proof. So this one, interestingly, it's 109 proof. Now, we would have gone into the barrel very likely at 110 proof when this was barreled. So the fact it came out a little bit lower is kind of interesting. This would have been barreled on April the 7th, 2015. That's what that D0715, the barrel number there. Just give you an idea when this was barreled. So this is, you know, this was probably bottled almost a year ago, and it would have been, according to the label, 4 years and 4 months. So this is our wheated bourbon, single barrel strength.
Okay. And as we bring this up, for our first nosing of this, what should we expect in here, Dr. Pat?
Well, this being a single barrel strength, I don't want to give away everything that I think about it. I mean, normally our single barrel wheated bourbons, I get a lot of classic flavors like vanilla, caramel, those kind of things. On this particular one, I got some prune and some apple and a little bit of banana. But like I said, this is a little bit higher proof. So, I mean, I'd be interested in what other people think about it more than what I think.
Gotcha. Warm glazed honey buns from Justine. That sounds good. Prune, maybe even a little mild raisin. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's really good on the nose for sure. It's a lot of stuff going on there.
Yep. Yeah. One thing I'll mention, and Erik had touched on it earlier with a sweet mash. We run a sweet mash recipe. And one thing we know, scientifically about sweet mash is the distillate actually ends up a little bit higher pH. So it's a little less acidic than a sour mash recipe, which you would expect because sour mash is more acidic in the fermentation process. But one thing that we get, again, this is 109 proof, and I'm used to drinking higher proof stuff, but this is going down pretty smooth. And, one thing we attribute to sweet mashes is that higher pH of the distillate lets you drink a higher proof, and it kind of goes down a little bit smooth. You don't get that real intensive burn.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's kind of another observation that I wanted to point out.
Okay. Again, still on the nose stuff here, picking up a fig, very little alcohol, malto meal on the nose. And that next one gets into the tasting. So let's do a tasting here and see what we got here, gang. So, all right. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is a smooth drinker. That's what you're looking for. 109, you can't even tell. I mean, it's gentle.
And that would have been, this would have been exactly what was dumped out of the barrel. We don't do any type of filtration or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's just exactly what came out of the barrel right there.
Mm-hmm. So you're getting butter, just delicious, dangerous, great mouthfeel. Some of the things that are coming through. What are you guys getting on the taste on this one? Buttered popcorn. How do I get a bottle of this? Apparently, if Pat's got any left at all, his personal collection here. So
dwindling quick with all these tastings.
Yeah. You and I have been on several of these together. So it's a big thing right now. So that's the other thing. You got on the big bourbon trail, and also you started doing all these virtual tastings. It's just a whole cottage industry popped up. I never heard of Zoom until all this stuff started. Now I'm doing Zoom 3-4 nights a week now.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Cherry Danish with sweet frosting. That sounds pretty darn good. I don't want to agree with the butter popcorn, butter pecan. That's nice. Yeah, definitely a lot going on here.
This would have actually been made when we were running our pot still. So even though we've been running column still since 2016, this would have been a little over a year before we started running our column.
Gotcha.
So this would have been made on our pot still. So that's a Vendome pot with the helmet. It's got when Colin was describing his still, I took the liberty to make a little diagram, but you can kind of see the flow of our distillate. So there's the pot with the helmet, and then going over to a 4-plate rectifying column. So the vapor's going up, getting condensed, and I don't know if you can see that, but anyhow, we condense at about 184 degrees our vapor on our pot still coming off our rectifying columns, which gives us about 144 proof. By law, bourbon's got to be distilled under 160. And on our column stills, we're coming off our high wines more 137, 138.
Okay.
Which we're actually getting real good consistency from what we were pulling off our pot versus our column. So now we're actually got some 4-year-old column coming out, and we're getting ready to change our label to reflect, the label on this particular one over here where it's got the recipe, we actually say pot distilled.
Gotcha.
So we're getting ready to either just take that off completely because we're kind of transitioning from pot to column. But we've been doing a lot of barrel picks lately, and people been picking the column still stuff right along with the pot still. So we're getting pretty good consistency between the two.
That's got to make you feel good, because it's always somewhat scary, even though you guys know what you're doing, very professional, and you've seen a lot and done a lot, but still a transition between, the main equipment that you're using has to be somewhat a fear associated with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're using all Vendome equipment, so there's a pretty good amount of trust, and, we place in those guys, being the suppliers to all the major bourbon producers in the state of Kentucky. There's a good bit of, we got a good bit of trust in that equipment, as well as having worked with a lot of distilleries that use that equipment. So, and you think about it on a chemical standpoint, the vapor probably really doesn't care if it's in a pot still or a column. It's getting condensed at a certain temperature. I mean, there are definitely some factors related to how we separate our heads and our tails from the distillate on a pot versus a column still. But, those things are pretty well controlled in either case. So, we're really happy with what we're transitioning over to on our column stuff. And it's a damn good thing, because 215 barrels a day, last thing we want to do is be sitting here trying to, hey, we got to make 215 barrels a day of hand sanitizer instead of bourbon.
Yeah, you don't need that. So question from Evan, the pot still, is it going to be, used for anything? Is there going to be, are you guys still using that at all, or has it been decommissioned?
Well, it definitely makes a nice trophy over in the corner. But in addition to that, we do use it for, we have a rum product that we make from Kentucky grown sweet sorghum molasses, harvest rum. And then we also have a vodka that we make from our wheated bourbon distillate. So we take the same distillate that we're drinking right now, instead of putting it into a barrel, we distilled over 190, and our pot still system has the rectification on it to allow us to go above 190 proof, which is required for vodka. And also, we pull our rum off about 165 proof, which we wouldn't be able to do with our column stills. Those are basically bourbon making machines. So, we definitely do use our pot still for rum and vodka. But these days, we're pretty much sticking to our column production on whiskeys, bourbon, as well as rye whiskeys.
Very nice. So last question we always like to ask when we're talking about, Flagship Whiskey, this is where you're at now. Is this it, or is the future going to be a little bit different for your Flagship Whiskey?
Well, we have, this is our wheated bourbon. We also offer a high rye bourbon, which is the exact same recipe, except it has 24% rye instead of wheat. So that's another one that's out there. We also do a rye whiskey, which is 56% rye, 33% corn, 11% malted barley. And that's offered as a single barrel strength, whereas our bourbons are bottle and bond. Unless it's barrel pick like we're having tonight, it's actually barrel strength. But, we just released the 6th year of what we're drinking now. So that's kind of something that's new. And then next month we'll be into 7-year-old juice. So we've got a long-term plan. I mean, 8-year, if it's better than the 6-year, we'll be doing an 8-year, 10-year, 12-year. I mean, having a wheated bourbon, who doesn't want to see their wheat right alongside of a Weller 12, for example?
Yeah.
So we definitely have a long-term plan for aging to get to those older age statements. But, given the flavor of our 6-year right now, I mean, I think our sweet spot's going to be between 8 to 10 year, but we're definitely, just for the sake of, we're just, definitely going to have some 10 plus, 12, 15, 20 year stuff as the time goes on.
Great. All right. Well, again, thank you to all of our presenters. Really did a great job and brought us some great whiskey tonight. So that certainly was a lot of fun. And we always like to just open it up now if anybody has any questions. And you can take yourself off mute. You can still send it through the chat if you want. I'll certainly read it on your behalf. But you can just take off your mute and come on and ask a question. It can be for the group as a whole, or you can target individuals if you want to ask them about their specific whiskey or their distillery. So what do you guys want to know?
I'll ask a question. This one's for Dr. Pat. So you just mentioned you have bottled and bond bourbons and barrel strength rye. Was there a specific reason or choice that you made that the bourbons come out 100 proof and the rye is barrel strength?
Well, we didn't ever release anything. We never sourced anything. We never released anything less than 4 years old. So just kind of as a statement, that our first stuff was bottled in bond. Okay. I mean, that was kind of important to us. Outside of that, we enjoy our whiskeys kind of a little bit higher proof. Now we do have plans to release some lower proof stuff, just as a more economic offering. Once we get into more substantial quantities of aged whiskeys. But, that's pretty much the reason why we went with bottle and bond, is just so that would be, kind of a mark of excellence. So, that's the first thing we ever released, which indicate, we made it, we bottled it. It's at least 4 years old. Not to take away from anything it's less than that, but yeah. And yeah, as bottle and bond, it's got to be 100 proof. And we enjoy those higher proofs.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Evan. Who's next?
Hey, I just wanted to go ahead and say thanks all four of you for coming on. Every one of your products is enjoyable, and I'll be seeking out and trying to make it to every one of your distilleries. But I heard at least two of you out of the four say you make vodka, and I need all of you to make vodka, because otherwise it's a solo trip, because my wife doesn't drink bourbon. Makes it really easy on the liquor cabinet, but it makes tough for travel. So I know Dr. Pat said he did, and Joyce, you guys make it. Great. So how about the other two of you? You make vodka or anything I can sell her off on, because I need something to make the trip easier.
Yeah, I can say we make a chocolate whiskey that if you're not that into the bourbons, let's see, I probably have this is our chocolate whiskey, which is
oh, that's cool with the little library back there.
Certainly more in the, if you're not that into like classic bourbon profile, we do honey whiskey. We do, we play around a lot with flavored whiskeys, not because, a lot of people look down on flavored whiskeys, but I sort of say, not everybody likes bourbon and not everybody likes Scotch. So we try to make a little something for everybody. But we don't have the equipment to make vodka because we do all pot distilled. So we just take our pot distillate, which, is essentially moonshine, and we just add different flavors to it and offer that to people.
Right.
Thanks.
Erik, any plans or do you have anything that you feel might be, good for the non-whiskey, non-bourbon fan?
Yes, we do have a vodka, to infuse vodkas, just to, for exactly as you discussed, sort of saving marriages and
you're doing your part. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's the least we can do.
Okay. All right. There you go, Bear.
Sounds
like everybody's got something. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I've been doing is that at the end of the evening, I've been putting just a little bit of all the bourbon in one glass and drinking it, and that's also good.
So the four here need to collaborate maybe on something?
Yeah, well, I just took all four of them and put a little in this, and it tastes damn good.
Okay, you four can run with that, but please, throw Paul a little something, some sort of.
I'm not a connoisseur. I can't really taste all those different flavors in there, being an old guy, but it's fun.
Okay.
Yeah, and I love it.
Okay.
Well, infinity glass.
Yeah. He's blending. He's blending. So yeah, there you go. All right, who's next? What do you want to know?
And I know Colin mentioned that they didn't have a bean sort of in their history, but little do you know that your book was one of the things we were trying to convince him that this was possible, just because he came from such a large scale background. So
yeah.
Also for everyone else that's out there, one of the fun things about our industry is we get to be fans as much as sort of as makers as well. So again, you did play a role in that process. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that.
Hey, that's cool.
Yeah, and that is one thing I'd like to know is if I was going to read a book about all this stuff that you're talking about, so that I have a little bit better understanding, what book would I read? Well, where would I go?
Well, we have a great book here.
Oh yeah. What's it called?
That's the Guide to Urban Moonshining.
Urban Moonshining. Okay.
Yeah, it will teach you, if you want to make whiskey, it will show you with very few ingredients and parts, and you can do it at home. Although doing it at home, I should always clarify, is illegal. But
so what's that called again?
it's the Guide to Urban Moonshining.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Paul will be ready next
But
time.
I will throw it back to Erik and just say that one thing that was great about this lineup is that everybody, I feel like 6 years ago, if you had a craft whiskey panel, you'd have a lot of stuff that was sourced from, one of the conventional, commercial distilleries. And so it's great to be with people that are actually making their own whiskey. Really, everybody's taking something, has a different approach, and that really shows in the whiskeys. Whereas if we were doing this 6 years ago, it would have been 4 different whiskeys from the same distillery that kind of tasted the same. So my pleasure in sort of the opportunity to taste stuff that I haven't tasted before, and is to enjoy the variety that I think is yet to come in American whiskey. I mean, we're just now starting to get into some of the age statement whiskeys from some of the people that are really doing it from field to glass. And so to be able to taste that is really exciting. Yep,
absolutely.
I'd just like to echo what Colin just said. It is great to be with a panel that is doing it, like we are, from ground to glass, and producing their own product and putting their own product out on their labels. It's really awesome.
Yeah. Great group here. And and like Colin said too, what's so neat about it is the whiskeys are all very different, all very good, but all very different and unique. And, it's, the basics are the same no matter where you're doing it, but that's the cool thing, that you can come up with a product that tastes so different and so enjoyable on different levels. So it's cool. All right.
Just quick question for you, or maybe not so quick. With having multiple harvests of a heritage grain like Bloody Butcher, have you noticed your yields? Have they swung quite a bit as someone who's sort of getting into that? We've heard sort of anywhere from 15 to maybe 50 bushels per acre, which seems like quite a bit of variety.
We have experienced a lot of variation in yield of the corn. Over the years, we've been growing it at about 9 years now, and we've had a lot of different varieties of yields. This year so far is going really well, and we're averaging about 100 bushels an acre.
Wow.
Yeah, my husband has been doing a lot of work to get it all lined out, and we're actually harvesting very early relative to the corn being totally dried out. We're actually harvesting it around 28 to 30% moisture, which, as distillers, you can't use that. And we've got a dryer on our grain bin, so we're actually drying it as we harvest, to get it down to like the 12% we want to use. But we're doing that because one of the issues we have with these heirloom corn, specifically with Bloody Butcher, is it gets so tall. It grows really tall and likes to fall over in August and September thunderstorms. And that's just something that makes it really, really hard to harvest. So we're trying to get it all harvested before like those winds from the hurricanes get up here and knock it all down on the ground. Yeah. Once it's on the ground, then you can get down to those 15%, 15 bushel per acre yields. So that's some of the stuff that we're learning is you get it in early and you spend money on propane to dry it.
Thank you for that insight.
All right. What else? We got a great panel here. A rare opportunity to talk to 4 people in the business like this. So any questions?
Hey, Erik, where can we find your guys' product? I assume distribution's probably fairly limited, would be my guess. Because I haven't seen you on the shelves right now, but are you available online, like through Sealbox or something else that'll ship around?
Right now, I believe the only site is for whiskeylovers.com. And we're working with, I believe it's, actually my wife could tell you, but shoot us an email through the website. I can definitely keep you updated. Right now, it is fairly limited distribution.
Erik, go ahead and just shoot me if you remember the other site or whatever it is. You can shoot it to me too. I am going to reach out to these folks tomorrow. I'll send out an email to all of them with some information. So yeah, including the video here for anybody who missed it and that type of thing. So I'll have that if you.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yes. That always seems to happen a lot with Erik. His wife has to keep him on point. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. All right. All right. What else do you guys want to know? Okay. Well.
Sorry, can I ask one more?
Sure. We've got to, we're still we're on schedule. So go ahead.
Play with.
What's that?
I'm sorry, Dr. Pat, how many different yeast strains do you guys play with?
I mean, we've been collecting yeast for a while. We have about 9,000 different strains. Some of those we don't know anything about. I mean, we're kind of like paralysis by analysis of where we're at. So we got a lot more stuff than what we do anything with. But we've got about 9,000 strains. We market about 9 of those to distilleries. And then we probably have another 9 or 12 that we market to breweries. And then we have 15 or 20 that we market to non-alcoholic fermented, like probiotic type of, kombucha, those type of things. But that's actually a good point because we've got thousands of strains. I mean, we've got strains that can turn cheese whey into alcohol. We've got, so they're fermenting lactose instead of glucose and maltose. There's strains that, have medicinal benefits. So there's a lot of things that we could do. And there's a lot of alcohol producing yeast strains that we have that have not historically ever been used to make alcohol, but they make a good fermentation. So there's no reason why they wouldn't make a good alcohol. So that's kind of some of the things we're going to move into in the next 2 to 3 years, start taking some of these yeast. Some of them we can't even identify because there's no knowledge about them. I mean, we got one yeast, we were doing some work for it was actually one of the old distilleries here in Kentucky, climbing through the pipes and, extracting DNA, looking for what would have been there. And we actually found live yeast. And whenever we did the identification on it, the only time it had ever been witnessed was on one of the polar ice caps, like somebody pulled it out of a ice core sample. Yeah.
Holy cow.
There's a massive, there are probably 1,500 different species of yeast that have been identified. And that's probably less than 5% of what they think is available here on the earth. So our collection, we don't even know what thousands of those even are. So, if every day we would just, we could just spend time learning about that, we'd love to. As a business, we tend to go where we can actually make some money and support our employees and things. But we're little by little, partnering with universities and colleges on different research projects to try to bring light to all these different yeast we have. Not only, how do bourbon yeast differ from Scotch distilleries, et cetera, but what about all these strains that don't even have a name? So there's a lot of work yet to be done in that area. Good point.
So where is yeast? It's not an insect. It's not a horse. It's not a human being. What do you? Where is it classified? Just as a yeast or what?
It's actually in the kingdom fungi. So it's classified as a fungus. So it is actually yeast is used as a model organism to study aging in humans. So the yeast cell is very similar to the structure of human cells in terms of the makeup. It's a eukaryotic organism. It's got a true nucleus. So outside of the cell wall makeup, it's very similar to the cells in our body.
Okay.
Wow.
Interesting.
So it's going to make me a young man next week.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Well,
good.
if somebody was studying
Drink
aging
more.
and used you as their test sample, they'd be waiting a long time for results, you know. So with the yeast, you know, they get a result every couple hours. So
Okay.
Yeah. Tim saying, how about an ABV Network yeast strain pick, which is not that far off. I know Pat has shown up at the office of our friend Andrew Webrink, who's a good friend of the ABV Network. And
he was at our distillery just today, actually.
Was he? Yeah. So
Yeah.
so yeah. Every once in a while, Pat will bring him some yeast to try. So take a swig of this one. See what you think. So yeah. So that's not a bad idea. So Mr. Webrink is
even at 78, I can learn something. Damn.
Heck yeah. That's coming on these virtual bourbon events. You never know.
Yep.
Evan just wanted to dovetail. He liked what Dr. Pat was saying there and wanted to throw it out to anybody else on the panel. Anything you're doing unique, either with wood, so with your barrels, or with yeast, or anything like that you want to share?
We are very much attached to Firm Solutions and very appreciative of Dr. Pat, because that's where we get our yeast.
Yeah, he does an amazing job there. And of course, if you've watched Kindred Spirits, Steve Beam talked about, he wanted to get that historic yeast that he had, and he had another outfit try to get it for him and was unsuccessful, and went to Dr. Pat, and they were able to get a partial DNA out of it and figure out exactly which one it was. And then he was able to recover that and utilize, the historic yeast that his family had used in the past. So that's the type of things that he does. So it's a little sleuthing and detective work in there too, not just the science side of it. So it's neat stuff that you do there, Pat.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to weigh in on Colin? Anything you do unique with yeast or with your barrels?
We don't do anything unique with yeast whatsoever. We just use the same yeast every single day. But the wood question is an interesting one, only because just this week we released a whiskey that the cooper had screwed up, and usually for bourbon you use a charred oak barrel, and the cooper had forgotten to char the barrel. So we had this barrel that for years it got rejected for the wrong flavor profile, and none of the blenders knew what was going on until they finally, after 7 years, looked at the barrel on the inside and saw that it was an uncharred barrel. So that was a discovery. So but what was also interesting about it is the proof had shot up. It went into the barrel at 116 and it came out close to 160.
Wow.
So it was an insanely high proof corn whiskey.
Yeah.
Legally, it was a corn whiskey. So it crossed 8 years, and then we bottled that, and we had 21 200 milliliter bottles of it. It had 81% angel share, very little left of it.
Yeah.
But sometimes all of that is just to say some of the stuff that you experiment with, you don't always even plan it. You just sort of you taste something and you say something. That barrel had a piece of tape on it for years that just said weird. And so, so it's important to kind of taste everything. And sometimes there's experimentation going on that you don't even know about. That was one that was pretty fun because that's an extraordinarily high proof for American whiskey. Mm-hmm. So we just released that on Wednesday and sold through those 21 bottles in about 2 hours. So,
wow.
But that was a fun thing. But most of the time, yeah, we're I'd say we're trying to keep everything the same, but nature does its thing, whether that's through the grain or through the yeast or through the barrel or through the distillation. You try to control everything, but no distiller really can control everything.
All right, Erik, do you want to touch base on any of that stuff? Anything you're doing unique, whether it's yeast or with barrels that you're using?
Two basic yeasts that we use, one for rye, one for bourbon. Again, both Dick's selection and what he had used previously. And then with barrels, we've been experimenting with actually some groove barrels out of Zach Cooper. They actually take the barrels and actually sort of rifle the inside where they'll groove the staves and then do the char. So curious to see how those compare. Also doing some 30s versus 53s as well. And then for us, we're doing apple brandy was sort of a staple in our area for quite a while with all the German immigrants. So it's a lot of fun to sort of reuse some of those barrels. It's so painful when you're bottling things that are so young to take those barrels that you've taken the tannins out of and then give them over to somebody else. So for us, it's fun to have some other products that we can play with and use those barrels with as well.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I again want to give my sincere thanks to Joyce Nethery, Dr. Pat Heist, Colin Spoelman, and Erik Wolfe. Let's hear it for these folks. Came on and spent an evening with us, telling us about their flagship whiskey and letting us try it, which is really a special night for sure. For our group, our next event is going to be November 9th. We'll have 3-Chord, Still 630. Taiwa, Caro, Boot Hill, and then we'll come back on the 16th, Garrison Brothers, Traverse City Whiskey Company, Kentucky Artisan, and Buzzard's Roost. So be sure to sign up for that if you haven't done so already. There's still about 5 tickets left, so if you haven't signed up, get in before those sell out, because I'm sure they will as we get closer to that. With that, I want to also thank my associate, Justine Mays, as always, for putting together all the samples for you guys, getting everything mailed out, nothing broken, and getting that out to you guys and making sure that everybody on the call got their whiskey, as well as even our distillers and owners here today. So congratulations to her for a great job once again. And that concludes tonight, and we appreciate everyone coming on and joining us as well. So thank you for being part of this, and I look forward to seeing you at our next Flagship Whiskey event. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Absolutely.